Hello and welcome to another episode of What's on the Pile. I'm Nathan Besner, and with me is Jenner, Wagner, and Shane. Jane could not be with us. She is in the middle of all sorts of stressful stuff, and we wish her Godspeed. Tonight, we'll be talking about one of my favorite holiday films, The Man Who Invented
Sure.
Christmas, starring Dan Stevens, Christopher Plummer, Jonathan Pryce, and a whole lot of other talented people. It tells a somewhat fantastical and ultimately theatrical representation of the creative process by way of A Christmas Carol, a sort of biopic slash retelling of the classic story. The man who invented Christmas finds Dickens running low on finance and in need of a hit. We are then taken through the entire creative process surrounding the famed 6 week turnaround of the original. You wouldn't call it it's a short. It's not a novel.
Novella.
Novella. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are then taken through the entire creative process of that, which while simultaneously watching a biopic that has been reworked into a retelling of the very story on which it's based. It's high concept, and I love it. Dan Stevens is a dish. Christopher Plummer is amazing as Scrooge. And what did you all think?
Well, I'd seen it already. I think it was my idea.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, okay. I had not seen it before. It was a lot of fun. I have more complex thoughts about it, but in total and overall, I thought it was good.
I think it's probably the second best adaptation of A Christmas Carol I've ever seen. I mean, nothing even comes close to the George C. Scott version from the '80s. But leaving that aside, no, it's fairly delightful. I mean, as a biopic about Charles Dickens, it's interesting. The mind boggles at the prospect of a possible sequel to this about the unbelievably acrimonious breakup of Dickens and Catherine sometime later. He tried to have her committed, but yeah. But leaving that aside, so historically, like a lot of like a lot of light biopics, it's fanciful, but as a film in itself, I mean, you're absolutely right. The acting is lovely all over the place. Stevens, I've said before, is sort of the new Anthony Hopkins to the extent that I mean, we still have the old Anthony Hopkins, but even so. Christopher Plummer is, colossal, and the fact that nobody got him to play Scrooge earlier just feels like an accounting oversight. So, yeah, no, this was a lovely little time. I mean, stellar work all around. Terrific music by the always fantastic Michael Dana. I don't know the director, but yeah, pretty good. So
Director's mostly TV. In fact, I think almost all TV, and this is the one movie he's done. Bharat something.
there was
Bharat
something
Yeah.
interesting in their filmography. I can't remember now. Anyway, this was the second time I ever saw Dan Stevens. The first time I saw him was The Guest, and I have never been able to put that evil, sinister gleam in his eye. I've never been able to put that out of my mind in anything I've seen of his, including in this.
It was really weird coming to The Guest from Downton Abbey, which is where a lot of the rest of us first encountered him. Like, my mission is to help you. So,
Okay. This director also directed the third Crow sequel, which I've never seen.
Wow.
That's what I noticed in their filmography.
I have seen pieces of it.
Yikes!
I've seen the first. I've seen the original. It was the Crow's Salvation, which is, I guess, the third one.
Remind me.
Second sequel, not the third one.
Remind me about The Guest.
The Guest was, I think it was Adam Wingard.
Wingard, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was basically the Terminator meets the Stepfather, except a little different.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it, actually. Yeah.
I mean, it's not exactly a stepfather, but more, sort of a house guest who takes an interest in the affairs of the people he is staying with, and it turns out that there's been some really interesting stuff that's been done with him during his time in the military.
Okay.
It's one of those things I'm talking around it a little bit, but
the guy shows up basically saying that he knew their father who was in the military and had died, and he came here to make sure that they were taken care of, and he took that literally to the extent of, like, killing bullies. And at one point, I can't even remember why, but the thing in that movie that most set in my imagination was when he rolls 2 grenades into a diner. And I'm just like,
I don't even remember that.
why? I can't remember why that happened, but
it's one of those movies with a rather extraordinary up ramp of gleeful overkill. To one of the great, oh, you gotta be kidding me, stingers at the end of the movie in the last decade.
I will probably not see it. I just don't like Adam Wingard.
Because
of everything I've ever seen of, like, 2 or 3 things I've seen of his. I gave up on him pretty quickly.
Except for Godzilla versus Kong.
Okay. I have an explanation for that.
It's a Godzilla movie.
When you take NyQuil and there's that one hit of the flavor that at the very beginning after you've taken it and you're like, ugh. And then you're like, all right. And then you feel really good afterwards. That's Adam Wingard to Godzilla fans.
Okay.
I like that.
Weirdly specific.
I understand exactly what you mean. I think that's a beautiful simile for it. The point is Dan Stevens is a freaking treasure, and at this point he's a multinational treasure.
He's so good in this.
Yeah. And at the same time, between, as I say, Downton Abbey, The Guest, this Apostle, the guy can segue.
I still think he's one of the most brilliant
solar opposites.
He made one of the most brilliant career decisions of anybody in ever when they were like, he was like, I'd like to be written off Downton Abbey so that I can go do movies. Yeah. And they were like, okay, we'll write you off. We'll have you go off so that we can bring you back later. And he's like, no, fucking kill me. You kill me off. He put it in the contract that his character be killed off. He was like, I want out of that show. I don't ever want to come back. And everything after he left was shit.
He was the heart of the
show. Of it.
Yeah, I've never seen any of it either.
I mean, is that a show where people die, or was
not much, not often?
Like it would be.
Of course, after that happens, it's one of those things that they lingeringly hint that somebody is not going to survive this installment. But
yeah, and then they start killing people all the time, basically, like in childbirth and shit. And it becomes very over the top and soap opera. And
I mean, it was soap opera from the beginning, but he kind of was the magnetic pole of the program, and it didn't quite have the same zhuzh after he left.
When I say soap opera, I mean actual soap opera by the end of it. I mean, some of the line readings and everything is so over the top. And yes, it was always a soap opera, but not a soap opera.
Like evil twins show up and
not quite on that level, but yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it got really bad. I feel like he saw the writing on the wall. I think he saw that because it was teetering on that by the end. And then they had the freaking the chambermaid get raped and everything, and
I think it.
Most shows should not have more than 3 seasons.
Yeah,
most shows. Yeah, there are exceptions.
I mean, like half-hour comedies can go on forever.
Yeah. I would straight up kill for another season of Community or at least a movie, but even so,
they're making the movie. They're in production.
Really?
They talked about resuming writing after the strike ended.
Yeah.
Well, finally. Well, see, there I go. Given a sufficient span of time, I get everything I want, including Dan Stevens in the next Godzilla vs. Kong movie because he's tight with Adam Wingard.
Yeah. What I do like about what Adam Wingard is doing with the new movies is he's basically like, okay, remember those people from the last movie? Fuck them. Who cares?
I
These are
think
new
Rebecca
people.
Hall. I think Rebecca Hall is back.
Is here and there, maybe somebody comes back. Okay,
Yeah. I
but
mean, if you can get Rebecca Hall is always a good get.
it's like, okay, you have Bradley Whitford talking about the Hollow Earth through the entire King of the Monsters, and then you have Godzilla versus Kong, and suddenly it's fucking what's his face from
Skarsgård.
Skarsgård, yeah, the vampire Skarsgård.
Yeah.
Uh,
Playing kind of adorably against type as a complete clumsy goofball. But,
no, I still
even
enjoyed
so.
the character. I find it highly amusing that even though they had a character in the same series that they could have brought back and would have been a callback, he was like, nah, whole new character to replace that guy. And now in the new movie, he's like, no, fuck that guy. He's not in the new movie.
Because we got Dan Stevens.
Yeah, now we have a new guy.
And Dan Stevens is an objectively good get.
Also,
yeah, the math works.
Okay, we're getting way far away from the man who invented Christmas, but
we wandered off a bit, yeah.
I do want to talk about Godzilla a lot later. So
that's
fair. Yeah. Anyway, does anybody have anything to say about the film other than it's fun and
it's fun and it's amusing, it's lighthearted. Yeah, it got me on a few points. You know, you tear up near the end. You're supposed to, and it did its job perfectly well. There's two approaches you can take to this, and one is much more cynical than the other. The way in which it's supposed to be enjoyed is as a heartwarming Christmas tale. You'll gather the family around and look at all of that. And for that, it's absolutely serviceable. The other is as an aspect of a biopic. It's got like some relation to reality and how the story was actually written, that these were his influences and stuff like that. And through as I was watching it, looking at it from that perspective, I started getting really cynical about it because it was so pat and so like, you know, in this week he meets a guy and his name happens to be Marley, and he pulls out, you know, this, that, and the other just straight down the line.
Yeah.
And it's kind of discouraging that I have to be so cynical about something like that because I know they made some of this shit up. And
obviously,
I'm really curious, obviously, but I am curious, like, at the essential basics of it. Like, what was his relationship with his father like? And did he
did go to debtor's prison? Yes,
he did go to debtor's prison.
And Dickens himself did get basically shanghaied into a boot blacking mill.
Well, it wasn't exactly shanghaiing, but he was basically sent to the boot blacking factory at the age of 12.
Holy shit!
8.
I just realized something.
Yeah, what's that?
Saying to Shanghai something, that's racist.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I'm sorry.
I never thought about it before until I heard it. Anyway, yeah. I'm sorry. I had to interject for a second there. You go on. I apologize for interrupting.
Is it racist or is it areaist? Because that's referring to a part of the world, not the people. There's a presumption there.
I think you're playing semantics there. I'll correct.
Playing semantics to start with.
It was the wrong word off the top of my head in any case.
I don't think many people would. I don't think many people, period, would.
I'll give them a chance.
Really?
They'll totally come after you. Give them a chance.
We are.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it called out when someone.
Do you have?
Excuse me. Someone on a reality show I was watching said it, and then on the blogs afterwards, people were like, "This guy's a racist piece of shit." He's also, that person also happened to have like a Confederate flag tattooed on his arm.
So well,
a little bit of context there, but still, they did single out that term as being
I think the number 2 word on the list, just off the top of my head, would have been ganked, but I don't think that's quite accurate either. But is that at least not culturally offensive?
Gank
to
isn't
anybody?
offensive.
The
but
word you're
that's a
looking
little
for
bit
is
differently.
conscripted.
Conscripted, or consigned, something like that. Anyway.
Yeah, the word you're looking for is conscripted. Have we all got our Newspeak dictionaries in order?
Leaving that aside for the moment, I actually kind of agree with you on this one, in that my initial reaction to the thing was the on the nose. This feels sort of distinctly reductive to the creative process.
I think
his life.
when we did that movie, we did the movie about the guy who did Rent. We gave that movie some crap about that too. How he happened to meet all these people who had all these aspects that would eventually become Rent, and we were like, this is.
But it kind of gets across to some extent, due to sort of the theatricality of the ongoing execution of the process. If the initial elements of the creative process feel way too on the nose, like he met this guy, he met that guy, he met the other guy, the bits where he's sort of thinking through the story itself, and particularly his exchanges with Scrooge, of course, the inimitable Christopher Plummer. That whole stuff actually felt mimetic. That felt a lot like the way that feels a lot of the time.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
to a large degree. Go ahead. Sorry.
I really liked his line, like my characters won't do what I want them to do. And
that was the most honest line in the movie.
I've certainly felt that way. Like I can't get these characters, in writing, I can't get these characters from A to B. I can't get them. How do I do this? How do I get them to go here? And I feel that was very effective the way they sort of did that with the sort of fantastical aspect of the movie.
To a large degree, it is constructed like A Christmas Carol, because this is about how a guy turns his life around through a series of sort of constructed events, and that's exactly what happens in the story, except that's the purpose, that the ghosts are constructing these events for him to revisit and see to turn his life around.
Well, I wasn't exactly being facetious when I described it as an adaptation of A Christmas Carol. It's a meta adaptation of A Christmas Carol, but it nevertheless. That said, I can find nothing incorrect at that semi-climactic, tortured excoriation of his father.
That's what I'm curious about. Because it has to cast Charles Dickens in a particular light in order to give the story a proper arc, and I am curious how much that even resembles reality remotely. Was he estranged from his father? Was he supporting his father out of kindness or a sense of obligation? Did he genuinely dislike having his father around? The one thing I could easily look up, the bird. Is everyone familiar with the bird?
The raven in the movie? Yeah.
Yes, so that is incorrect, because at this point in Charles Dickens' life, the bird was dead. The bird was not given to him by his father. Charles Dickens bought it, and the children hated it because it kept biting them, at which point it got consigned out to the shed, where it found a large container of lead white paint and proceeded to drink itself to death. 2 years before he wrote this movie. No, it is funny. The bird's name was Grip.
It's a very morbid sort of funny. But
it was explicitly the raven that Poe wrote about. Because apparently he was inspired by a family picture of Charles Dickens, which Charles showed him in person, that had the raven as part of the family. So
that's elegant.
It is.
And it kind of doesn't work if the raven's alive.
Yeah. So it little bits and pieces. So I did attempt to look up some idea of what his relationship with his father was like, but I think I'd have to read an entire biography to figure that out. And I wish I had the confidence to say that the screenwriters of this film did read several biographies of Charles Dickens in order to construct this story.
I think it was mostly a straight adaptation of the book, which was presumably by somebody who read many adaptations of biographies of Dickens. But fundamentally, it's a piece of.
I was reading a Medium article about the history of Dickens with his parents, and it seems that by and large this was what it was like.
Really?
But it never really got better. He never really
Ah,
forgave his mom for keeping him working at the shoe
that
blackening
that was the
factory.
Parents, his,
interesting thing
his parents are kind of
because,
twats.
Yeah.
well, that was the interesting thing because this was so monomaniacally focused on the father,
Mm.
when it turns out it was the mother that Charles Dickens actually had a beef with, because
Yeah.
apparently, basically, the father got through a happenstance inheritance, got out of debtor's prison, and the mom was like, Charles could still work at the boot blacking factory, and that's
Yep.
what Charles held against her.
Yeah.
So
Way deeper resentment. I get the feeling
yeah,
that, you know, dads and sons do way better in marketing when you
Yeah.
have dad versus son than dad versus mom, because there are a
well,
lot of like different, there's a lot of baggage that comes along with that isn't really like
Yeah.
like most sons on some level had a scuff up with their dads at some point in their lives if they knew him, I would say.
But if it was with their mom, they assume it was Oedipal or reverse Oedipal.
Right. Right.
yeah,
Right.
that's true.
So I can see why they would go in that direction. It's stupid. It's misogynistic, but I get it.
Weirdly, it's misogynistic to not paint the mother as monstrous as she was. Weirdly,
Yeah.
but it's
It-
it's
it-
it's also weird because the way it's put in the movie, basically, the father was just unlucky and not good at like managing the family, and that's how he ended up in debtor's prison. That's how his son went to the bootblacking place. But in reality, all that appears to be somewhat true. And then the real tiff was that, again, the mom didn't want him out of the factory. And to me, that would that have made the family way too unsympathetic if the father had literally done what the mother did? Would he have been just too unsympathetic to forgive in the third act? I
I
don't
think
know.
he was already too unsympathetic to forgive in the third act. That's kind of my point. The substance of when Dickens catches his father, rifling through his trash, trying to steal his
Signature.
handwriting and signatures and stuff. You know, the way that he lays into him there feels real. It feels honest, and I could detect no discernible errors based on the context of the movie. The fact that he forgives him later on doesn't feel particularly earned, but it works as a narrative thing because, and this is the point that we may have been, the lead we may have been bearing here. This is not a serious film.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is a light biopic / holiday fantasy. This is a nice movie in the best sense of the phrase.
It's got
It's a good holiday
just
movie.
enough darkness to it.
Yeah,
Just enough.
yeah.
Little whiff of it to
It's
be
got
cool.
it's got enough weight to keep it from fluttering away on the winds of inconsequence. It's got some oomph, but this is not a searing expose. Nor does it need to be, nor frickin' should it be.
And it was a fun film. I enjoyed it. I like what they did with it. I
It's
enjoy watching
delightful.
it with the
That's my
family.
point.
Yeah.
It is a good family okay picture.
Yeah.
Although I did find, reading up a little bit of the background on this on Wikipedia, I do absolutely agree with the thesis that Dan Stephen mentioned from Miriam Margolies, who, of course, is one of the grand dames of British stage and screen, and who played, I believe, Mrs. Fisk, the housekeeper in this, who suggested that Dickens was bipolar.
Yeah.
Which you kind of get from the movie, and you absolutely get it if you read his biography.
Yeah, there are multiple books theorizing his bipolar.
Like I say,
And
if you read it, that's how it reads.
That's one
It
reason I
becomes
really
dirtier in the
connected.
film.
I
Sorry, go ahead.
That's one reason I really connected to the movie in a lot of ways, because I feel that like I have those weird ups and downs, like you never know which mood I'm gonna be in kind of thing, and some days I'll just be nasty out of nowhere unless medicated. So
Did that feel like properly presented in the film? Because to be perfectly honest, I didn't feel like he was bipolar in the film. I just felt it was the writer who is constantly being interrupted. And God knows I know that. I say as
Mm.
two children go walking by, and one apparently is coming to tell me something. Oh, he's coming
I
to
mean,
get
it's really
something.
just
Okay.
the scene with Tara, right, where he really
It's
seems to
No, I
lash
mean
out and get
it's
it's
more than
kind
that.
of
He has
it's the whole thing.
yeah.
I mean,
He
they
has
say it. They talk about him and tell us through telling him that his moods are always all over the place. But I mean, I didn't see anything that I would have described as particularly bipolar in the film. Maybe it's
okay.
clearer in the book, but
I
maybe I'm wrong.
I will yes, I will respond as the bipolar person in the room.
Okay.
Um his his attitudes throughout the film have a teetering kind of lift and drag to them. Like in the beginning, he is in a deep depression, a very deep depression. He's more sluggish, he's more slouched, and Dan Stevens shows that with his manner, his behavior, his mannerisms. When he finally has a break, an idea that this is what I want to work on, this is what I want to explore, he starts straightening up. His hair becomes a little more put together, and he becomes more fast talking. And then when he's doing the things like figuring out Scrooge and whatnot, the editing gets faster as he's thinking them up, because what that's really representing is like 6 hours of pacing and thinking and shit, just really shortened. And then you have this epiphany, and it blows up, and the outbursts at being interrupted when you're thinking about something, that is a classic response for a bipolar person,
To be fair,
to
that's a
jump to
classic
anger.
writer's response.
Yeah, I
Full
felt
stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone
Most
who-
writers are neurodivergent. What can I say?
You're not wrong.
Go
I
ahead,
mean, a
Tim.
lot of it did. I mean, as someone who's not that familiar with, bipolar, like I guess it was hard to tell the difference between that and also just the circumstances of what he was going through. It seemed
Yeah.
like a lot of people would have behaved that way.
Reacted that way. That was the same thing that I would have said. I think that may just be because we've been shown for so many years that the writer attitude and the creative process is such a roller coaster that I think it kind of went over my head, I guess.
Well, a
Yeah.
lot of like Beethoven is thought to have been bipolar. There are a lot of creative people throughout history who show the signs of of bipolar. What Jenner? What?
Did anyone, this kind of segues, did anyone else also note with a slight hint of alarm that Catherine Dickens's wife was Saint Maud?
No, I didn't.
Morvith
didn't
Clark,
realize that
I
at all.
see it now.
Morvith Clark from
Yeah.
Saint Maud,
I was
which
wondering where I saw her before.
I was
gave
wondering where I
that.
recognize that name from.
I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't really want to segue.
Oh,
I was
okay,
still
I'm
having
sorry.
a conversation, and you were like,
Sorry,
I
sorry.
couldn't pay attention to what I was saying.
Sorry.
You interrupted him. Do you know how frustrating that? No, sorry.
It is incredibly
No.
frustrating.
No, I was going with the
Yeah, I
bipolar
know.
aspect.
Yeah.
Only. Yeah.
No, I don't even remember what I was saying. We were talking about there are a lot of cues in there that are bipolar cues. They're glitzy. It's a glitzy version. But when you think about how artists throughout history are represented as the stay up all night, thinking so hard, focusing solely on one thing, we now know is probably bipolar, ADHD, autism, even different things that they're neither bad nor good. There should be no stigma attached to them. They are just things that we are. They're labels because we're humans and we love to label shit. And so growing up with the idea that we have to work like that in order to produce good material is what has been the hardest step for most people in finding help with their mental health issues. So I like that this presents it as, hey, this is supposed to not just be this is what the artist does. This is supposed to be this guy is also bipolar. Like there's a reason his brain works this way, and it's not just a normal thing. Like most artists I don't know do not work like that at all. Most of them sleep sleep fine. They get up at the same time, go to bed at the same time. They can sell paintings and shit. They're good at that. There are very normal artists. There are plenty of them, and to think that they are all like that is uh
It's a Hollywood creation.
yes, thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
Mhm. I mean, it's stereotyping the creative process when in truth, by its nature, the creative process is going to be unique to an individual.
Right.
Um, so
I mean, it's romanticizing in a way, saying like, "Oh, they're not like us. If they can create this, a normal person can't create this. It's got to be someone who's
it is it
compromised in other ways." That's just sort of this. I don't know if
exactly.
romantic is the right word for it, but it's a sort of idealized version of what a creative
Well,
person is.
you get the same aspect with like scientists in that, scientists are shown in films and in TV and stuff like that to be like socially maladept, or there has to be some other way in which I can feel okay about myself for not having discovered relativity. You know, there must be some reason that I'm not this smart. And we're not going to
Yeah.
get into that. That's a long, long road. So,
Mm.
oh, it's okay. There's actually something wrong with his brain that makes him able to do this.
Here
Therefore, I don't have to feel bad that I didn't, come up with this brilliant idea or have this brilliant development.
here's a great example from my own, some anecdotal stuff.
Mhm.
Whenever I would work on projects for people, if they say gave me 2 days and I came back to them and I was like, I stayed up 2 straight days, 48 hours to produce this for you, and it's whatever my quality is, however you think that quality is, and they're like, oh my god, that's amazing. You know what they always said to me? You're so smart.
Yeah, yeah, I am in a very similar position.
Mm.
I have, it is actually an obstruction in my job because I will like set up a training and they're like, Matt, no one else can do this. They're not as smart as you. So you can't expect them to figure this out. I'm like, it's a freaking logic puzzle. Anyone can do this. It's not a hard one either. There's only like 5 options. If you sat down and tried for a little while, you figure this out. You're just taking this as an excuse to not work. But that's dragging the outside world in. But yeah, it's very much like that. I mean, the current idea of what a smart person is what? Well, it's the Big Bang Theory, a show about socially maladapted in nerds and losers who happen to have brains that work irregularly, and that means they are able to do this stuff. And it's okay that I can't do this stuff because I'm socially well adapted. You know, it's about
Don't
making the audience feel okay
yeah.
about not doing the things that these fictional characters are able to do.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on the nerd face and the people who continue to make references to it, no matter how persistently but gently I say, let's please not talk about that, if not in so many words.
Yeah.
Um,
That show is not a beloved show amongst our people, the very
no.
people they're purporting to be talking about.
Mm.
The sad thing is, you know
Yep.
who it is beloved by? My parents.
My, mine too.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
My dad is an electrical engineer, but he is not a nerd culture nerd. He's a science guy and an engineer, and that's his window into nerd culture. And I'm like, it's the wrong window. That is a window facing a brick wall.
And what would
Uh,
you consider nerd culture at this point? Because It's
I don't
kind of
even
like,
culture is just
Oh,
culture now.
yeah, it's
Oh,
just culture
that's
now.
that's just a whole. That's an hour-long conversation in its
Yeah.
own.
It really,
That's
really
true.
is.
What is join us next time? What does
You know what nerd culture
men's
is?
makeover cost in Manhattan these days? Join
Yeah.
us.
Andy, you know what nerd culture is? It's
Brill.
Eltingville.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Ouch! Stop it.
Yeah. Oh.
I'm in this picture and I don't like it. Or worse yet, am I in this picture?
I did have one thing I wanted to carry on from the movie this week, just briefly. I was wondering what, if anything, everyone's favorite version of Christmas Carol, of the Christmas Carol as a holiday movie might be. I am curious.
That's
I have
a
an answer.
really
as-
hard.
Because as a ghost story, which is what this is, one of the things that you have to appreciate is how seminal a Christmas. This is another one of the. Anyway, one of the things you have to appreciate is how seminal Christmas Carol was in reviving the not only Christmas traditions, but also the Christmas ghost story traditions, which had been a long running thing going back to British prehistory, but had largely been effaced with the rise of Puritanism back in mostly the 1700s. But Dickens went a long way toward reviving that, and of course, that remains a tradition that continues today, most kind of staunchly evinced by my man, M.R. James, who's still probably its greatest practitioner, both in original and even up to this year with the forthcoming adaptation of Lot 249 from Mark Gatiss in adaptation.
Wait, they're doing
yeah,
Lot 249 again?
I believe so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I liked Steve Buscemi in that.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I'm going to be interested to see what the Brits do. It's presumably going to be a bit of a more classical style, but they've been doing the M.R. Jameses for years now, and I thought they've all been pretty terrific. But in any case,
Favorite
a
either
Christmas
way.
Carol. I was going to say, as a ghost story, going back to what I said earlier, I guess it was 1985 version from, I guess it was CBS with George C. Scott as Scrooge was one of the best movies that year, full stop. And in my estimation, easily the best adaptation of A Christmas Carol. That said, it has a lot more sort of a horror movie feel than a Christmas Story feel, so to speak, which I can kind of say about my third favorite adaptation, which is, of course, Scrooged, which is a lot more a comic horror movie than it is
anything else.
No, that movie is terrifying consistently.
Shane,
Somebody.
any opinion? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I feel like there's for some reason the one that sticks in my head is I feel like there's an animated Disney version out there somewhere that I saw.
Mickey's Christmas Carol?
Is it Mickey?
Mickey's Christmas Carol was pretty good. Put that maybe at number 4.
It was actually the first Mickey cartoon in like 30 years, which is why I stumbled upon that fact a little while ago. But go on.
And I do remember I actually saw Scrooge in the theater, the Bill Murray one. I haven't seen it since. I think it's on Netflix now, or either Netflix or Amazon Prime. I've been meaning to check it out again. I don't remember anything about it.
I watch that movie every year. It's one of my favorites. Until there was somebody hated it. Somebody famous, and it was
Roger Ebert hated
it. Was not Roger Ebert who said this. It was like George Carlin or somebody, but it wasn't George Carlin. They said they hated it because he doesn't actually learn anything at the end. He's the same guy.
I kind of agree with that. That monologue that he has at the end, this was kind of feels desperate. Feels kind of like pleading for the continuation of his existence, which Ebert, in if I recall, a relatively negative review, took as kind of a ding against the movie. I actually thought it was a feature because I was, by that point in the movie, even seeing it the first time, I was pretty straight up viewing it as a horror movie.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Nate, did you have an answer? Are you hunting for something?
I'm kind of hunting. I'm looking at
I can do
all of the
mine.
different versions
Who
of
hated
Christmas Carol.
Scrooge?
Okay, I can do mine.